I want this to be like a little bit laid back, maybe. I don't know. I've been told I think too much. Those of you who know me would probably second that. But at the same time, so you're going to get a peek into the chaos that has been my brain the last 2 weeks. As I've thought about this, about once a quarter, well, for the last, I don't know how long it's been, I've been asked to go and present at BYU during one of their oral habilitation courses for their undergrad SLP students. And every time it's a little bit different. And as I was thinking about how important I feel this topic is, everything was just coming together in a jumbled mess. So I kind of just want to let it go where it goes for us and what we need, because we're obviously in a different place than SLP grad students at this point, right? So I hope that you might think about something. Sorry, I'm going to keep going like this. That's going to drive me crazy. Do I need the mic?
No.
Yes.
Just talk really loud.
I know it's deaf education. Thank you, audiologist. How come I don't have a clip-on mic that would make sure that everybody could hear me?
Get a red cat in here.
Okay. Let's get rid of all of this. Let's go to slideshow. Okay. Okay, so the title that's on the agenda, like Adam said, so what's your title for the presentation? I'm like, I don't have a title, Adam. There's not something, this is just kind of a topic. And so what is on there after I explained to him is what he decided to label this. And it really wasn't very exciting, but it was more positive than the first thing you had on there. So this is where we're at right now. The power of perspective, how sweet it is. We're going to do a little would you rather, okay? So, would you rather sweet or sour? Sweet.
Sweet.
Sour.
Sweet. I want to see the sweets first.
Sweet.
Sweet? Okay, sour. All right. Would you rather milk or juice? Juice. Sorry. Just raise your hand when I say it, and then that'll get us through a little faster. Would you rather beach or mountains?
Oh, man, that's too hard.
I know. Do you guys want that middle line where you're on both sides and you can just like,
California, you get both.
right? Cake or ice cream? Oh, you guys.
Ice cream.
Team cake all the way. Okay, Summer Olympics or Winter Olympics?
Oh, I don't know.
Like both?
Yeah.
Golf?
Oh, boom.
I mean, there's playing golf and watching golf.
Mini golf.
Very different. I went mini golfing last week. Or football.
Is Taylor Swift in the stands?
I guess it depends on what makes it happy for you. Give me a good football game any day of the week. Israel or Italy? 4th of July,
Yes. Yes.
Halloween.
Mary.
Sorry, you can't see anything that I'm doing here. Okay, here's one for you. ASL or spoken language?
Both.
Okay, good luck to you all. Okay, so let's see where this
What's that
goes.
supposed to mean?
It means, remember that we want both
Tornado of emotions.
a lot,
Yeah.
right?
That brings up.
This is supposed to be reflective and happy. This is not supposed to be stressful. Okay, so what do you see?
Does it mean I'm negative?
I'm going to do a dance around this. Just does it mean you're negative with what?
If I don't see what everybody else
Do
sees.
you want us to see the?
Tell me what you see.
Which one do you want us to see?
There's the young girl.
The girl.
Old lady.
I'm the old lady.
Old lady.
I
See the girl.
Old lady.
Does anybody only see one thing?
No.
Okay,
I'm not one of those people that can see.
so here's the hat for the girl and the nose and the neck with a necklace.
Just cover the eyeball.
Or-
Oh,
Well, that's the ear for that
I
girl.
know, but
With
it
a hearing
Right.
aid in it.
With a hearing aid,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
And for the old woman, this is her nose, this is her mouth, and her chin. So do we see them all now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does everybody see them both?
Now I see it.
Okay, So, so is there a picture of an old woman there?
Yes.
Is there a picture of a young girl there?
Yes.
So those of you who only saw one of them, you were able to see the other when it was pointed out to you. Those of you who only saw the girl, did you think the people who couldn't see the old woman were just like wrong and whatever? Like, you're just wrong. Okay, so keep that in mind too. All right, so when we were talking about our candy, I said this is a jumbled mess, right? So like when I'm doing this presentation with the students, of course, I'm throwing candy at them. Take some of your preferences, whatever. Sour isn't bad and sweet isn't good. Why? What are your thoughts on that? Other than what I already have up here.
It's
Totally
all
taste
preference.
buds, right? It's all preference. It's not even whether something is sour or sweet, good or bad. Now, oh, I have a new twist on this, which is another reason why my brain is jumbled. I had COVID like 3 years ago. I could smell, I could taste. I was just, living life. And almost a year later, I realized that I actually had altered smell due to COVID. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought it was just you had it or you didn't, not that it would be kind of funky. And so since that time, my smell has been, I used to have like totally sensitive smell, everything. I knew the smell of everything, right? But now I couldn't tell you if something was sweet or sour based on a smell. I would have to taste it. And sometimes even that, I couldn't taste peppermint for a long time and things. So it is about preference, but it also can be about perspective, right? And what your experience is telling you, something smells like or tastes like.
What you're missing is savory beans all.
Okay,
Amen.
there's something there. Have any of you seen this before? The
Yes.
danger of a single story. Okay, I'm going to play this clip. It's only 3 minutes. Again, I'm just throwing some things out there to get you thinking for a minute. We don't want Facebook. Oops. Hold on a second. Oh, will it not do my volume?
It should.
Should it?
United States. I was 19.
Okay, hold on, let's rewind.
I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. So after I had spent some years in the US as an African, I began to understand my roommate's response to me. If I had not grown up in Nigeria, and if all I knew about Africa were from popular images, I too would think that Africa was a place of beautiful landscapes, beautiful animals, and incomprehensible people fighting senseless wars, dying of poverty and AIDS, unable to speak for themselves, and waiting to be saved by a kind white foreigner. So that is how to create a single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become. I recently spoke at a university where a student told me that it was such a shame that Nigerian men were physical abusers like the father character in my novel. I told him that I had just read a novel called American Psycho, and that it was such a shame that young Americans were serial murderers. It would never have occurred to me to think that just because I had read a novel in which a character was a serial killer, that he was somehow representative of all Americans. And now this is not because I'm a better person than that student, but because of America's cultural and economic power, I had many stories of America. I had read Tylan, Updike, and Steinbeck, and Gateskill. I did not have a single story of America. I've always felt that it is impossible to engage properly with a place or a person without engaging with all of the stories of that place and that person. The consequence of the single story is this: it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. Stories matter. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity.
Amen.
Okay, thoughts?
We played that for all of the US.
Yeah. Can we share?
Yeah, Allison.
This is one of the most difficult things I think I experienced as an outreach teacher, working within lots of different groups of people, is that they had one child that was deaf or hard of hearing in their class. And so they assume they know all kids that are deaf and hard of hearing based off that one circumstance. The fact that I think there's now one norm referenced exam for kids that are deaf and hard of hearing speaks volumes. How many speech tests are there? How many psychology tests are there? Because they can't find two deaf kids that are the same, because none of them have the same story. None of them have the same level of loss. None of them have the same parents or the same technology brand they wear. So I just think I love that you shared this, but I think this is such a difficulty within our field of that person had a sibling that had hearing loss and their experience was terrible. Therefore, all of our students are having a terrible experience in education. So it is very dangerous with our students to assume someone else's perspective is accurate for that child.
Thank you.
Well, and I think that comes to where some of us, we are the only deaf ed teacher they might know for 20 years,
Right.
25 years. And so when you're coming into that meeting, you are the expert. And they'll just be like, tell us what to do, you know? And we all have our own biases. We all have the ways that we prefer to do things, the things that make sense to us. And so I think that's something too, we have to be really aware of those biases that we have when we're going in to work with a student too, just because every student is different. And I think that's the thing too. We have to know that we are a single person often serving in 40 plus schools, some of us. And we sometimes are that one single story. How do we broaden our perspective and our biases?
Those of you who have had conversations with me about this topic know that this is not a call out. I apologize, Terry. I have an issue with the word bias because I feel like it's a negative connotation. I feel like it implies you can't change. And maybe some of us do have a bias that we are really strong holders of, and we won't change that. But I think a lot of times, probably more appropriately, what we have is a very strong perspective based on our own personal experience of the stories that we know of people with hearing loss. Anybody else have anything?
On the world. It's, you know, and as we get older, our lens needs change.
Right.
Get exposed to different things,
Good point.
you know, and so you do, as you know more, you do different.
When you know better, do better.
Yep.
So that's exactly what I want you doing. I want you just thinking, share if you'd like. This is going to seem kind of random, but hopefully for you individually, some of the randomness, something will click and impact how you are serving your students. And almost more importantly for me right now, I don't know what you all are experiencing in the outreach. I know what I'm experiencing on a campus. And there needs to be the ability to see the other perspectives, right? We need to be better at being able to have the conversations that help us engage and know more stories and understand where other people might be coming from, and that maybe it's not the old woman all the time. Maybe sometimes it is the young girl, you know, like we can see more than one thing there. Obviously simplified, okay? So ASL is a deaf, hard of hearing child's native language, and they have the right to full communication access through a visual language. Does that sound reasonable for an ASL? For someone who raised your hand for ASL, does that sound like a reasonable feeling? Okay. Listening and speaking provides many children the opportunity of connection with family and community through the home language. Does that sound reasonable to those of you who raised your hand for spoken language? Okay. So which is correct? Neither one. Which one's wrong? Neither one. The right answer is the one that is right for the family and the child based on their support and understanding. The wrong answer is the one that parents feel pressured into, don't understand, and don't have the support to be successful. Both require effort, and both are difficult paths for different reasons. Any thoughts on what that would be?
In this job, in this role and responsibility, I came in with one understanding of how the world worked. And I had to very quickly take off my glasses that I
No
had
more
been.
Dr. King
Yeah, I
perspective.
had to like put it down. This is what you learned in school. And this is the reality. And especially in this job where I have both ASL teachers and LSL teachers, I think I'm the only director in the entire state and world that has to deal with two different worlds happening at the same time. And that's changed my perspective to see that, you know what, I've met students that have been very successful in this modality, and I've met students who've been very successful in this modality, and I've met students that have absolutely failed here and absolutely failed here. And what I've come to understand is if the family is engaged with the child and participating in that child's academics and communication, and the school is on board, whichever model they're willing to support and sustain is the model that I want to support and sustain, because that's where I'm going to see the most growth. And that's my own perspective. But when I go into a meeting, I'm not trying to get them to go to one side or the other. I'm trying to get them to support whatever they'll support, will support, right? And that's my own take on.
There's a reason you're our leader. So, I mean,
So
but
Heather, can I add that there are some kids too, late implanted kids, that need both. And so I think that's where it's so important for us to actually use data to look at it from as neutral of a perspective as we can and look at all the details of this child. Because we have, 4 kids that it's legit. They need both. They need some type of, it's not ASL maybe, it's sign support with the auditory that they're listening to. But it's just so critical to look at each person and be that's what I love about Adam. Sorry, I'm going to toot your horn, Adam.
Don't stop it.
Adam is so supportive of creative thinking. And these kids need creative thinking oftentimes because they're not like anything you've ever experienced before, even as a 20-year teacher, right?
we've established their unique individual stories,
Yeah.
right? So each child, each family, each teacher that we interact with is going to need different supports, is going to need different advice. And if we're only coming at this from a point of bias, we're pretty locked in, right, to what our advice and our support will be. But if we're coming at this from a point of a perspective where we understand that maybe they have different goals and desires than we might have if it was our decision, right? Or different experiences or different family circumstances that child is just a different child, right? Than what we might think fits the mold of a particular decision. Hold on to those thoughts too. And if anybody wants to jump in and share anything at any time. So, okay, some of you again who know me, this is what my last grad student in the spring made me these stickers. You probably can't see them on my computer. What does it say, Adam?
It depends.
It depends.
So it's Dr. Fujiki and BYU.
Okay, well, I don't know him, but great minds. I don't know. No, the whole point is that we can't be so stuck in one answer that we don't look at the alternatives. And I already prefaced this with, I think, too much. And this, This may take a shift to a more about me in some ways if you're not giving me a lot to go off of, but it's because this is kind of my own thought process of how I have dealt with some of these questions and got to where I am in my thinking. So it depends on the end goal. What do you often hear from families as their goal?
Just want to engage with our child. We just want them to have a full life.
We want to communicate.
We want to communicate. We want to engage with our child, have a full life. Anything else? I hear somebody on. Amy, it says you're talking. Do you have?
I think that's one of our responsibilities is to help families look down the road. We know adults who have been through this. We see students in high school that we have as kindergartners, and we see what, again, not every child is the same, but we can help parents see down the road, a road that they have never traveled, that we have walked with families. And that's one of our responsibilities, I think, is to give families the clearest picture we can. This decision is going to take you probably here, and this decision will probably take you here, and either is fine, but just so you know, you're clear what road you're walking, where you're going to probably end up.
Right.
Because I think families, having never walked the road, don't always have a clear picture of what this looks like down the road.
How many of you, well, we'll get to this in a minute. Keep it in mind, it depends on the end goal, right? To develop a language, okay, now we might get into the weeds a little bit here. Let's just keep it like not necessarily superficial level, but to develop a language in general requires immersion with fluent communicators, right? Do we have any second language learners here other than maybe you've learned ASL in addition to spoken English? Ame,
I grew up speaking Chinese
how did you learn Chinese?
by listening and how do I learn?
Did you
Chinese?
live in China?
Yes, I lived in
I didn't
Macau,
know
and
that.
That's where people speak Cantonese, and that's where I grew up, and I learned language that way. And after I graduated from high school, I came to the US, and that's when I started to learn to speak English. I learned a lot of written English and grammar, but I didn't really get a lot of opportunities to speak and hear spoken English. So when I came to the US, that's when I started to learn to speak and try to understand spoken English.
Okay, so that is a very unique perspective about knowing written English, but not knowing spoken English as well, potentially, as far as how it would engage. And that's often what we have with our kids with hearing loss, right? They learn written English, but they're communicating expressively with ASL. Okay, so if ASL is not the native language of the family, then fluent communication isn't modeled consistently. Does anybody have an issue with that? I am happy to go down issues. Okay,
That's what we fight to provide them. Is
right.
autonomy.
We
know
need
that
to give
they're
them
getting
access to
tested and
fluent
they're
communication.
coming Sometimes language zero.
Right. So we need to be able to help them access fluent communication, right? That's what we're trying to do. The child is receiving an incomplete language from birth, even if they're able to access it naturally through visual means. Conversely, if the child is not identified as soon as possible, does not have early and appropriately fit amplification with 8 to 10 plus hours of wear time or access to professionals for support, intervention, parent training, then auditory skills and access will likely be insufficient to maintain spoken language development consistent with their hearing peers. Does that sound legit? And both of those scenarios equal language deprivation. Okay? It's not an either or. Both of them are not ideal. Both of them do not give us fluent communication. So whatever level we're at, usually by the time they get to us, this has already passed, right? So whatever has happened, this has already passed, but this is kind of where it starts. Okay, so how do we support families? I just want to briefly touch on this just again to give some background perspective, I guess. So We need to provide information, support, and training that empowers them in making decisions and advocating for their child based on their goals. Remember that it depends on the end goal. And so that's when our expertise and our perspective and our experience comes into play with what that end goal outcome is and how we get there. So the needs differ based on the goal. If the parents of a newly diagnosed child state that their goal is for their child to communicate with ASL as their primary language and be immersed in the deaf community, then we promote intensive ASL classes for the family as soon as possible, access to a deaf mentor, as well as other fluent ASL communicators, and training and advocacy. I left off on here resources for community as well. These are critical resources. What else would you add? Anything? Yeah, Allison.
I'm all about a truth, a reality of like, if you're choosing this, then there likely will not be kids in the neighborhood that are using that same form of communication. So he will have community, but it likely will not be your neighborhood community without the support of an additional person.
Or even extended family, sorry.
Or extended
Cousins,
family.
Aunts and uncles,
Yes.
grandparents, probably not part of their close community.
And I would swing it the other way too, because we do have some parents that are deaf and their child is trying to speak and, you know, and it's like, it's hard to navigate between these two worlds because truly these kids don't fit in either one perfectly. And so just giving them the reality of this equals this, but this is the limitation of that. In spoken, this equals this, but that is the limitation. When they're at the
We'll get
pool,
there.
they
Yep.
may have to take their tech off depending on
Mhm.
what brand they wear. So there needs to be a reality check on all sides. And if we do not give these families honest truth, then they are going in with their eyes tied and they have no idea where they're stepping. And it's not fair to them.
So I've heard a lot of you say things that in my mind, I've immediately thought as you were thinking, there has to be trust. You have to trust who you're talking to, or everything. I mean, again, as someone who thinks too much, if I'm talking to one person and then they tell me one thing and I'm talking to somebody else and they tell me something else and I talk to somebody else and I'm hearing all of these different points of view and opinions. And then I have to take all of that and try and figure it out because I don't trust one of them. I don't have that relationship or an understanding of their recommendations for me. I'm just spinning. I'm in a whirlpool for a long time. So for us to be able to establish trust with the families we work with and with the teachers we work with is really important in order to be able to have those hard conversations. These are not easy conversations. Again, usually by the time they get to us, they've already been had. But sometimes we find ourselves with students who have no communication at all and no primary language, and we're still kind of in this place. If parents want listening and spoken language to be the primary communication method for the child, then intensive training to maximize auditory access and spoken language exposure is the immediate priority. This includes understanding technology, strategies, and typical development. Connecting families is also beneficial. This can begin even prior to a child being fit with amplification, and these two are critical. Any additional thoughts on that?
The expensive tech upkeep.
Oh, yeah.
Some do not understand that.
Right.
And they think that one pair of cochlear implants is gonna last them 20 years.
Right.
And that's not.
Yeah.
One and done, like, oh, we're good.
Right. Right. Or they're the magic ears, right? Just put them on. Everything's fixed. It's taken care of. We'll get to that. Is it really only 10:30?
You don't have to go to the end. It's just, that's your time limit.
I will stop whenever you want me to. Okay.
Go to the end of each slide.
But remember sometimes, okay, so this is just a slide out of a different presentation where I have mentioned that right now, what is prevailing? What are you seeing primarily coming for language requests from families?
They want everything in their tool belt.
We want both.
They want both.
We want both. For families of children with hearing loss, mastery of a spoken language takes extraordinary effort and commitment. It is not as simple as just putting on a hearing aid or a cochlear implant. Mastery of a visual language takes extraordinary effort and commitment. It is not as simple as learning vocabulary and stringing signs together,
Or putting an interpreter in front of it.
or putting an interpreter in front of them when they have no language to build off of.
I
Amber?
would say one is a more heavy responsibility on a child versus another one's a more heavy responsibility on the family, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on those? I think this is one of the places that our perspectives start to cross, as in hit. Okay. Both can be attained. I'm a firm believer of that. I've seen that happen with kids who are fluent communicators in ASL and spoken language. But it really does take extraordinary effort and commitment. I'll give you a little bit of insight in that in just a second. The professionals who support them need to understand each aspect, right? They need to understand how critical the things are that need to be in place for the child to develop spoken language. They also need to have someone who understands the critical pieces for developing the visual language. One person can do that. They're really skilled. I could not be that person. I could say, I understand what you need to learn a visual language, but I can't teach it to you. I can help you on the other side. Let me get you a resource for this. And that's when we know when we need to pull in other people, when it goes beyond our area of expertise, right? Okay, so that end goal, like really going back to kind of what Allison said too, I think sometimes we lose sight of what we're working toward and what the parents want and whether what we're seeing from the child is leading toward achieving that goal. And so we need to always be evaluating, are we still where we want to be? Are we still making the progress we need to do? Amber?
I think it's interesting too, because I think sometimes we're caught between what the parents want
Yes.
and eventually what the child wants, and sometimes those aren't the same thing.
Right.
And then where do our supports lie, you know?
Yep. That is a presentation for next year, Amber. You're on the docket, Adam.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Hi there.
Heidi.
Just to kind of piggyback on what Amber said, I think that's where the complexity of our jobs comes in. And I think when we were talking at our faculty meeting about kind of just how we wished the state would understand how complex all this is. Like, is it ASL? Is it LSL? Do we count it as, what if we have an interpreter? Then how do we count those hours? And all of this, I think, is just a perfect explanation of how we try to meet, like Amber said, like from a parent's perspective, from a student's perspective, but also from our professional, perspective. And then times that by however many people you have on your caseload, right? And it's overwhelming. And to find that balance, it's very complex.
And children, going back to like Amber talking about what the children want. Have you been told or hear in your positions, we often will follow the lead of the child. The child is telling us how they want to communicate. Have you heard that? Sometimes I think what the child is telling us on how they want to communicate is in line with what we see professionally based on our experience. And sometimes if we look at what that child seems to be telling us is how they want to communicate is not in line with our professional experience. And so going back to Amber's point, where do we have that balance of, I need to be very honest with parents, I need to be very honest with teachers, that this is where we're headed based on what I see, do we have?
I think that also goes.
Yeah. Yep.
Julie was saying, if you choose this route, this is probably where you're going to end up. And this is where, so let's be very clear what we're choosing. And if we're choosing both, like, is this one going to be like, what proximity are we going to get to?
Are we okay if we only get to this level instead of up here? Yeah.
Is it better to get really high on one, or should you sort of middle ground?
Right.
I mean,
And how are we
all of that
tracking
is
that
the
trajectory,
reality.
right? And that gets me into another area that we won't go in, but our data and our progress reporting and things like that, and how we're determining goals and all of that determines what that trajectory looks like. Right. Allison?
I was just gonna say, some parents fall into this where they get told from one side, the kid not wearing their technology is that child expressing to you they
Right.
don't want to wear, they don't want to hear. The issue with that is I didn't listen to my 2-year-old when he didn't want to brush his teeth.
Amen.
So like, there is an age too of like the parent has to kind of parent
Yes.
and look at their goals and outcomes, right? But typically any child with a cochlear implant, it's noise at first.
Mhm.
So they're not going to want to keep the implant on, but the more they keep it on, the noise turns into language, turns into their connection.
And you're an expert in listening and spoken language,
Yeah.
which allows you to be able to give them that input and advocate for that, where someone who is not may not be able to support that effectively in the same way, right? So any dual sport athletes in here? What'd you do, Allison?
I did basketball, volleyball, track, and cross country.
Wow.
Okay, so what season is volleyball?
Volleyball is the first season.
So that interfered with cross country,
Yeah, my senior year,
okay?
I stuck it to my volleyball.
Okay, so I want you to think about that for a minute. I'm going to just speak to an experience that I have just because I know what went into it, and tell me if yours is similar. I have a daughter who, very high level dancer, very high level soccer player, very high level track. And she didn't want to do track. Track was like kind of in the off season of soccer when she first started. We did it for conditioning, right? Dance was her love. That was her thing. Soccer was number 2. Track wouldn't have even made the, okay. So this daughter was able to excel in all 3 of those areas, but she could not do all 3 at the same time. She could not. Now, we did soccer changes in the car. She ate her food from one event to the next event. She would go play a soccer game and go run a track meet. She would have a dance recital and that night be on the soccer field in a tournament. That was how we ran our life. And it was not me. I didn't make her do all those things. She was very driven. She loved everything that she was doing and she wanted to excel. But what did she give up? What do you think?
Social life.
Okay, she's not a real social, her social life were those groups. Those were her.
Injuries were probably happening.
Okay, injuries, actually, because she was a cross sport
Well, that's good.
athlete, because she did dance, which was totally different muscle groups than soccer and track, she was never injured.
Wow.
And they said that was why, because it was cross.
Was it academics? Like,
Nope.
what was she doing? Or
She got into BYU, no
I
problem.
think it's your
And
emotional health though, because when you are so like.
she is full of anxiety. Yes.
Because that's how we.
She was not captain of the drill team. She was not captain of her soccer team. She did not make all state. She made all region. She didn't make all state. She made finals at BYU invitation or state track. She did not win. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize like the accomplishments. I guess that's my point. The accomplishments, she's amazing. I am not her, but she gave up being the best at something, right? She could have maybe been the best in one of those things if she wanted to. The best, we recognize that as a relative term, right? You know where I'm going with that. I'm just saying you give it up. And how was she able to do that? The only way she was able to do that is the support team she had behind her to make all of that happen. And she had coaches that wouldn't let her do the drill team the first 3 years, finally did the 4th year. So she was able to do that. They finally would work together. So you needed coordination between people that thought everything else you're doing is taking you away from this one thing that you're really good at. And you should be devoted to this. That wasn't what she wanted to do. So we are that team. We are those coaches. We are the advocates and the supporting staff to help the people who want both be able to do it. But I'm telling you, it is just as exhausting as taking that daughter to all of those events and throwing food at her as she comes in. It can be done. But we have to know what our role is in helping that happen. And we have to be able to educate the parents if we have that opportunity. I don't think many of us are in that ability, but Julie.
I should say, and you have to be, maybe she would have chosen differently if you had said, you know what, if you just do something, you can win. What is important to you? Do you like it all that you want to do all of it, or do you want to win? And either is fine, but maybe she thought up front that she could win everything. Maybe she
We
went
just
into it
had that
thinking,
conversation. I love that.
I'm gonna win,
Yep.
I am gonna be the captain of
Mhm.
cheer and of soccer, and I am gonna win everything. And somebody needs to say, you're probably not gonna win. You probably can do it all, but you can't win it all.
Right.
And so that's the upfront conversation we have to be having, is say, you're not gonna win though.
Right.
What is important?
And that, you know, it's very interesting that you bring that up, because I think that has now played into her life now, and we'll get to that in a minute. She chose to give up winning. She didn't care if she won. She wanted to do the things she loved and didn't want to give up the things she
I'm
loved.
gonna comment about this idea of child-led as well.
Mhm.
When I was a child and my mom made me practice the piano, I absolutely did not want to do that. But as an adult, am I so happy I play the piano? Yes.
Right.
And so that's the thing too. As a child, I would have said, I don't want to play the piano, but now I'm glad I do. So I don't think we let the child lead very often, because children don't have
Perspective.
they don't have long-term, they don't
Yes.
have the understanding of what
Right.
happens in adulthood.
Amber, did you want to add something?
I was gonna say, it kind of reminds me of a doctor, right? They force them to specialize. You can't be a master of all.
Yeah.
The jack of all trades, master of none. And
Yes.
A speech has to be.
There are some things about speech I'm willing to let go. Okay, we won't go down the examples on this. I'm sure you all have some in your mind, unless somebody really has something that comes to mind quickly. But there comes a time when it is too late to make a different decision and still achieve the same outcomes. Okay. So what has formed your perspective, and has it changed? I want you to think about that for a minute. Just raise your hand if you think your perspective has changed. Whatever it is, has your perspective changed? Okay. Anybody still holding tight to whatever perspective I'm not talking about ASL versus LSL. That's not what I'm talking about.
Any.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just your perspective in general. I'm sorry. But I mean, that's how it applies in some ways to our
Choosing
job, right?
fighting words here, Heather.
I'm sorry. So 35 years ago, I was only a granddaughter. Okay. So you'll have to indulge me. Think about your own experiences here. And a lot has changed since that time. My grandma had hearing loss. Okay. But she didn't have hearing loss until she was about 45, I think. And she had young kids. And I just remember like they had this thing on the phone that made it louder. And she was kind of a quiet person, but I always knew her that way. And I think that's just kind of how she was. An amazing opera singer. She was in New York, all kinds of things. So losing some of her hearing was pretty devastating to her, but that's all I really understood. So now I am a mom, I am a sister, an aunt, a cousin, a grandma, a great aunt, a friend, and a therapist to many individuals with very personal, very different experiences with hearing loss. We run the spectrum, okay? So my perspective over the last 35 years has changed quite a bit. Do any of you know this? Oh, okay. I share this with some and nobody's ever heard it. For anybody not familiar with it? Okay, I'm going to just read it really quick. Welcome to Holland. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. When you buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans, the Colosseum, the Michelangelo David, the gondolas in Venice, you may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It is all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in, flight attendant we would say now, right? And says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I have dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plans. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks, and you must learn a whole new language. And you will meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills and Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy and coming and going from Italy. And they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, yes, that is where I was supposed to go. That is what I had planned. And the pain of that will never, ever, ever, ever go away, because the loss of that dream is a very, very significant loss. But if you spend your time mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland. So that's written by a person who I believe had a son with autism back in the 80s, and they were asked to describe what that was like having a child with a disability. I know that many of our families with children with hearing loss do not view that as a disability. Some do. So there's, again, a different perspective there, right? So when I read this, I think of this as unmet expectations, just that this is what I had planned. It's not what happened. So I've been to Holland. It was beautiful. It was lovely. I did not anticipate going to Holland. It was a layover. And we had a long layover, so we decided to make the best of it. But I've been there. We're going to come back to that. The sweet and sour sides of hearing loss, the impact on connections, life events, and family. Why does this stat matter? I mean, we hear it all the time, but really, when we're talking about why does it matter that 85% of children, I don't know that that's still current. That's one that's been around for a long time. 85% of children with hearing loss are born to hearing parents. But why does it matter? Belinda, you're one of them.
We just felt like pioneers. I mean, we just felt like there was nobody else who understood. We just felt like we were the only ones there. We didn't know any deaf people. We didn't do sign. It was just like, oh, okay, well, we're going to do this, and this, and this, and this is going to be exciting. I mean, we were, after the shock of it, we were kind of like, yeah, this is going to be cool. Let's do this. And he ended up not signing. He did not like to be signed to. But yeah,
So
it was interesting because we didn't know, we had no idea what, just the single story we knew
right.
was just, oh, if you have a deaf child, you sign. That's what deaf kids did.
And when was that? When was he born?
2001.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little different angle. My daughter was born in 1990, and we were in Washington, D.C., and she wasn't talking. She was about 15 months. I worked for a pediatrician. I'm like, what do you think? He's like, yeah, go get her hearing checked. So I went and I took her to this district state audiology place, dark, dingy. It's DC, it's old. And we come out and the audiologist says, well, she has a significant hearing loss. She may learn to talk. She may go to public school. Gave me a paper and said, good luck. I'm like, okay. So I go to, my husband was in the military. I go to my military doctor, my military pediatrician, and she says, oh, she doesn't have hearing loss. She has an ear infection. Let me send you home with some drops. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Making long story short, she did have hearing loss. She was identified very early for 1990, but we were not given any resources. When I left that audiologist's office, I said, I guess the only thing I can do is prove her wrong. Like, she's going to go to school. She will talk. And so it's just my job to make that happen. I wasn't told about ASL, knew nothing about ASL. She was the first child, the first individual besides my grandma in our family with hearing loss. That's where my perspective started to change, right? So that's the foundation for me and how I ended up where I am. Other people have very different experiences. Belinda, you were told or thought that ASL was the way to go. And 11 years later, I subsequently had 2 more children with hearing loss. Only one was identified at birth based on his age when newborn hearing screening was finally implemented. And by that time, all of these other things, some of the things we've already talked about a little bit and alluded to, had come into play in our lives. ASL wasn't an option for our family at that point. We were all in on, we're talking, we're speaking, we're at the mainstream, we're doing therapies, we're doing all of these things. Not because we thought ASL was wrong. It was because that hadn't been our path, right? My second son, some of you know this, but I'll just briefly say, one of the things that has also shaped my perspective when we talk about people who have been wronged in the deaf community, right, is that my first son, second child, lost all of his hearing that he did have. He had EVA, and he was the fourth child in the state of Utah implanted in 1997. And we were at a soccer game, and I don't know how many of you remember Sound and Fury. Okay, so this was around that time. He was playing soccer, and he was about 6, and we had our other kids with us, and we were leaving the game, and he was happy, and these 2 people came up to us and said, "How could you have ever done that to your child?" And they were berating, like, in the middle of this soccer field, and my son was looking at me like, "What is going on?" That's been my experience. How do you think I felt about the deaf community at that point? At that point, I was just like, let me do my kid. You do you. I don't know your world, but I was just trying to help my son, who had lived the first 3 years of his life listening and talking, and this was our only option to continue that route. I don't need to explain to you I'm the oldest of 11 kids, and I have brothers and sisters who are younger than he is, who are not going to learn ASL tomorrow to be able to communicate with him. And that was not the direction our life had gone. Okay, that all being said, these are some of the questions, some of the areas that continue to come up throughout life. Social, will your batteries last long enough if you have a CI to accommodate a change of plans? I have 4 minutes, so okay.
I'm that guy.
You're that guy. I can have that guy. I need that. Occupations, like my kids' occupations are limited, right? They can't join the military. I probably would have 2 kids in the military following what their dad had done initially if they had been able to do that. One of them worked at Texas Roadhouse. Like, how can you hear in Texas Roadhouse? He was a waiter. I'm like, I can't hear myself in Texas Roadhouse. What if I can't hear my coach or my team doesn't know ASL, right? And back when my kids were playing, there weren't leagues for kids with hearing loss or teams that they could join that would know how to support them. We didn't have support. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay, so that's why you're all so important. More things: family, finances, advocacy, mental health. We talked about how expensive technology is. Okay, we'll skip these, but this is where your perspective comes into play, and your professional expertise is in evaluating these students. Okay, so I made it to Italy. It was an amazing trip. I would go back in a heartbeat. It wasn't like my most amazing trip, though. Do you know my most amazing trip? We'll get there in a minute. This is Lily.
Turn it on, and it's gonna sing you a little song, and there might be some decent feedback.
Does she hear that?
Yeah, probably. It's nice and loud.
Are you hearing this?
Lily.
Good morning, Lily.
Oh, it sounds up, huh? What the heck? Oh my gosh. What do you think? Should we try the other?
She immediately burst into tears. That's my granddaughter, not Sarah Cordingley, for those of you who. She was born to the one daughter who does not have hearing loss. And so they are heading down a completely different path in a very different world than what my perspective was shaped by. And my perspective is continuing to be shaped by what's happening with them. You see the hearing aid when it was first fit, that mold didn't even stay in her ear. She was 2 months old. The headbands worked, so those kept them in. That was her in April. She wore her hearing aids all waking hours. Her mom is a rock star. She knows what she knows because of how her perspective has been shaped by watching her siblings. She's also heard me complain a lot over the last 15 years, long before we ever knew that she would be on the same journey. At this time, she was meeting all of her auditory milestones and appeared to be a cochlear implant candidate, which was kind of freaking her mom out a little bit, a lot of it. This is her when she came to see Janelle. these are some of her concerns. She knows that she needs a cochlear implant, but how is she going to keep those on her head? She's finally gotten used to keeping those hearing aids in. Her access needs, are they going to change? Her insurance coverage, things that we were watching for as far as typical development at that point. And then the parent training. What kind of support was she going to have for parent training? Just prior to surgery, Lily was 9.5 months old. She was still meeting all of her auditory milestones. Her hearing aids were still worn consistently all waking hours. Her vocalizations have changed and were frequent, but were primarily vowels. We weren't hearing any babbling. Lots of inflection. And she was set for surgery on the 10th of June. This was the day after surgery, which is when I presented this little section the last time. She was clearly very fine after surgery. Now at 1 year old, do you see in her hand is her implant. You put it on and immediately it's off. But she likes them, but she's one. What does she have control over? Her hand, that's about it, right? Nothing else. Her parents are feeding her, her parents are changing her parents are moving her from place to place. 300 plus daily coil off moments, which is down from 500. My daughter said, that means I put them back on 300 times a day. Can you imagine a parent who doesn't know what my daughter knows? My clock says 2 minutes.
I have 0, but go ahead. Finish up.
Liz, she'll forgive me.
Liz.
No true babbling, but she has a lot of variety. She's highly attentive auditorily. Just because I need you to see this cute face really fast, then I'll move on. Happy birthday to you. Signing. Happy birthday to you. Monument that she went. Happy birthday, dear Lily. Happy birthday to you. Is she not the cutest? This is also changing my perspective because I think he's being a little harsh. I would never have said that 10 years ago. Okay. Lastly, how do I get off of this? You know what my favorite trip was ever? The life-changing trip was Israel. Don't have time to get into everything that happened in Israel, but that's our flight path. As we flew around the airport, that was the evening that Iran bombed in Israel. We spent our first night in Israel in the bomb shelter of the hotel. And this down here is the Sea of Galilee in Tiberias, where at 3 a.m, the Israeli fighter jets on the Thursday were flying over to Iran to retaliate. And this is what happens when there's a war and you visit the Dome of the Rock in Israel. There's no one there, no one. My point with this is that was not the path that I thought my life would take. This is not the place I thought would be my life-changing trip, but changed perspective, right? And my perspective continues to change about deaf ed and all of the rest of it. And so hopefully you had something you can think about. I'm going to end so we can hear from Lish because she's fabulous.
Thank you, Heather.